story is called Pam Parsnip. Pam Parsnip had a problem. Earlier that day, Mrs. P had left her young twins at Pam's neat cottage saying, "Please can you take care of them for 2 weeks whilst I go and look after my sister?" Before Pam had time to reply, Mrs. P had hurried off. A suitcase containing clean clothes and some toys for the children was standing in Pam's hallway, and 2 pairs of inquisitive eyes watched her expression as she suddenly realized what she had let herself in for. The twins were well known for their mischievous ways. Poor Pam Parsnip. It is difficult to know where to begin. So many things went wrong. She was glad when it was bedtime for the twins, so that she could have 5 minutes' peace. But they had not been in bed for more than a minute when the banging and thumping began. Wearily, Pam climbed the stairs and peeped in at the bedroom door. The twins were standing on their bed having a fantastic pillow fight. One of the pillows had burst, and feathers filled the room like a snowstorm. What a mess! As Pam cleared up the mess next morning, she suddenly thought that the twins were unusually quiet. She dashed down the stairs, only to find those naughty twins mixing. They had mixed cornflakes, pepper, sugar, salt, vinegar, flour, cocoa, cheese, and olive oil, and tasted it as they stirred with their hands. Pam dreaded bedtime. She popped them into bed, and as she couldn't hear a sound, thankfully thought they were asleep. She made a cup of tea and relaxed into her chair. As her eyes stared blankly through the window, she became aware of movements in the garden. Surely, it couldn't be. Yes, it was. There in the garden, the naughty twins romped about happily, trampling down her precious flowers and throwing soil about. They had jumped out onto the top of the bay window and scrambled down the trellis into the garden. Pam was horrified. What could be done with the naughty scallywags? The next evening, by playing tug-of-war, they tore a sheet in two and ended up by writing all over the wallpaper with a tube of Pam's lipstick. Pam was weeping when Penelope Strawberry called to see her. "Why are you crying?" she asked, and Pam told her about the terrible twins. "This can't go on," said Penelope. "We must think of some way to keep them in bed. I think they need a good spanking." "Oh, no," said Pam, who was a kind and gentle person. "I couldn't hurt them. Let's think about it over a pot of tea." As they sat talking together, Penelope came up with a brilliant idea. "Why don't we tell them a bedtime story each night? The ladies of the garden gang would all help out, I'm sure. Betty Beetroot and Polly Pomegranate are good at telling stories, and Gertrude Gooseberry would be excellent." So that is what they did. Each night, when the twins were tucked snugly in bed, a garden gang lady told the twins a happy story. And each night, as the story ended and the storyteller crept from the room, she left those darling twins sound asleep.
is called Lawrence Lemon. Lawrence Lemon had long legs. He was very proud of them. They were strong and straight. Just right for skiing, he thought. But where in the garden could he practice? It was a difficult problem, and he sat down to think about it. Now Lawrence had seen Mrs. Rake, the gardener's wife, sitting in a deck chair, darning socks and knitting. I could use the deck chair as a mountain slope, he thought. The next time the chair was left out, he had a wonderful time skiing down the back and leaping to make a soft landing on the compost heap. He often spent time skiing down the steep slopes of the shrubbery, skillfully dodging the shrubs and small trees planted there. It was great fun, and the birds and insects cheered him on as he raced past them, with his scarf streaming out behind him and his bobble wobbling on his hat. One day Lawrence found a piece of corrugated tin resting against the garden wall. He was delighted and spent the whole day climbing up the garden wall and skiing all too quickly down the tin and landing in the soft brown soil of the freshly dug garden. The potting shed roof was his next ski slope. It turned out to be very dangerous, because after his first attempt, Lawrence landed with an enormous splash in the rain barrel. It took Peter Potato and Roger Radish half an hour to get him and his skis out. But Lawrence Lemon was not discouraged. His friends said, "Why can't he go to Switzerland for a holiday? That's the place for skiing." So they all gave a little money to help pay for his holiday, and they took it to him the next morning. Lawrence was so excited, he jumped in the air for joy. The next 2 days were spent in packing. What a tiring job that was for Lawrence. He couldn't decide what to take. First it was the red sweater, then he changed his mind and packed the blue one, then the green one, and then back to the red again. His room was soon littered with unwanted clothes. Lawrence would still be packing if busy Betty Beetroot hadn't come along and packed for him. She soon had the suitcase fastened and the rest of his clothes neatly folded away. Cardew Carrot drove him to the airport, and some of his friends went too. They were almost as excited as he was. When Lawrence saw how huge the aeroplane was, it took his friends quite some time to persuade him to get aboard. Once safely strapped in his seat, however, he began to feel much happier. And when the aeroplane finally took off, he was thrilled to see the white, fluffy clouds beneath him. When Lawrence arrived in Switzerland, he could hardly believe his eyes. What breathtaking scenery! There were little wooden chalets dotted about in the snow, pine-scented forests, clear blue skies, clean, sharp air, and miles of magnificent mountains and valleys covered in crisp white snow. Early the next morning, Lawrence could be seen going up one of the ski slopes in a chairlift. Soon he was skimming down over the snow like a bird in flight. His heart was full of joy as he felt the cool wind on his face and heard the swish of the skis beneath his feet. He was certainly an expert.